Thanks for joining me today as I attempt to teach you the 17 knots that I use when I'm sailing. First of all, I've gone through YouTube's library and personally curated a competent crew playlist of the best sailing instructional videos on YouTube that I could find, which I encourage every prospective sailor to watch. Many of the videos in my competent crew playlist are not videos, so what do I have to add to this already extensive library? 17 knots may sound like a lot for one video, but I've found in teaching these knots that when these knots are demonstrated in a logical order, when the student can see the family tree and the logical progression of these knots, they find it much easier to remember and retain them. Hopefully you'll find the same. Of course, knowledge is no substitute for practice, so I'll put a timestamp link to each knot in the description below so that you can practice. Remember too, YouTube allows you to slow down the video if you find I'm going too fast. As always, I'm not perfect, so if you see an improvement or an error, please comment below. Let's get started.
The various types of knots that we'll be discussing today are the bend, which connects two lines together, the hitch, which connects a line to an object, the binding knot, which binds multiple objects together, and the loop, which can be put over various objects. For our first trick, we have the overhand or thumb knot. This is the knot that every child knows how to do. We're actually going to refer to it as the safety knot. In sailing, that's the only thing we're going to use it for, but we're going to use it for safetying every single knot we do. Very simple knot. Make a loop, put your tail through the loop, done. Using it as a safety on this bowline, for example, just make your loop all the way around, tuck your tail through the loop, and that knot is safe. This bowline can never work its way undone again. Moving on from the safety knot, we have the stopper knot. This is just a nice bulbous knot, keeps a line from getting away on you. Very simple again. Instead of just going around and making one loop, you actually make a second loop, put your tail through that, and tighten it up. When it's tied properly, you'll see this sort of Greek X going on. Very simple knot, right? Moving on from the stopper knot, we have the Fisherman's Bend. This is literally just two stopper knots placed back to back to join two lines of similar size. Just like that. It's a bend, so you start with two lines. Loop, second loop, and the tail goes through the loop. This is an old skipping rope, and it doesn't always play nice with me. This is not the best thing to be using, but it's what I have to demonstrate. On the other side, of course, loop, loop, and the tail goes through the loop. All right, there you go. Now, if there's ever going to be any life on the line, you're going to safety this. Safety knot again is just one loop, tail goes through the loop. Now it can't go anywhere. Same on this side. One loop, tail goes through the loop. This one is double safetied. It's not going to untie on you. I would have no problem going up a stick with a line tied in this manner. So unlike your stopper knot, your overhand knot, your Fisherman's Bend, where the working end and the standing end always enter and exit parallel to whatever you're tied to, in a clove hitch, it's always going to enter and exit perpendicular to what you're tied to. Clove hitch, you're going to have this two round turn on an item with one of those turns coming across everything. Let me show you how that's done. Go over once, doesn't matter left or right. Go over everything, and then tuck the tail through here. There you go. It's a very, very simple knot to tie. Unfortunately, it's not a terribly secure knot. You can see with very little movement, I'm going to work that all the way out. You're going to want to put a safety on this guy here. The only place I really like the clove hitch is on my fenders. It's not a terribly secure knot, so if you don't safety it, you will lose your fenders. But it's also very quick to adjust. Some of the docks, especially the government docks, where I usually sail, they require the fenders to be adjusted from one dock to the next dock to the next dock. This is easily accomplished. You grab here and simply tighten it down. You've raised your fender. Raise it again. Very, very easy to do. You want to lower your fender. Again, easily accomplished. Loosen it off. Let it go. You can just let that go all the way down. There you go. Let that get a little out of control, but there you go. Clove hitch is a decent knot for that. For this reason, I actually do use it. Because it's such an insecure knot, this is really the only place on a sailboat that I would ever consider using it. I've never found another good place to use it where I wouldn't use a more secure knot. After the clove hitch, the next knot I'm going to show you is the buntline hitch. The buntline hitch is made by tying a clove hitch onto the standing end here. Let me show you how that's done. Take a loop, take your working end, around the standing end again, and through itself to make that clove hitch. Okay? Great knot for tying onto objects, but again, it's a running loop, so don't tie it onto anything soft and squishy like a person or an animal. Tying onto a climbing harness, this is a great knot. Again, though, you're going to want to make sure that this has a safety tied on the tail. There. The next one I'm going to show you, based on the clove hitch, after the buntline hitch, is the anchor hitch. Again, you can see this classic clove hitch shape of your line coming over both of your turns, same as you see here. But the difference primarily on this one is that you have two round turns, which helps with any abrasion issues. If you have a lot of motion, say an anchor, that'll help distribute some of that. Let me show you how that's done. So, first of all, you're going to go around twice. One time, two times. Now, you're going to go around those two turns and through those two turns. There's the first part of your clove hitch. There's your over. Go around your standing end and through. You can very easily see this clove hitch shape developing. Now, the one problem with this anchor hitch is that it is not very secure. Any amount of working works this tail loose. It's actually a really, really terrible knot for that. Most books are going to tell you to seize this tail, just permanently tie it on there. But at a minimum, at an absolute minimum, you're going to have to put a safety on this one. Is what it is. That is the anchor hitch. Similar to the clove hitch is the rolling hitch. You can see, again, you have this one turn that comes across everything, right? However, where a clove hitch is really directional this way, whenever you have the load placed here, the rolling hitch is directional this way. You can see how it sort of puts a bend on the second line here, and puts a kink in it really, and you can tie onto that very well. Use this in places like an overrun on a winch where your lines are all bound up and you need to take pressure off of this line. You take a second line off of your second winch, you tie it onto your first line, and you can tension that right up. You can also slide this rolling hitch up the line and retension it again. Let me show you how that's tied. You've got your line that you want to put tension on. You've got your line that you're going to be working with. You tie towards the direction that you want to be pulling this line. One turn. Some people go more than two, but really all you need is that second turn. Around and through. Again, it looks a lot like a clove hitch, but you've got this extra turn right here in the direction that you're going to be adding tension. Go ahead and pull away. Moving on from the clove hitch, we have the constrictor. Now you can see the clove hitch has this one turn going over top, it's the same as this constrictor does, but underneath you can see that there's a little something going on there that's different. So let me show you what that's about. Again, very easy knot. Like the clove hitch, you just go from one side to the other side. One turn on one side, one turn on the other side. But instead of going through here like you would for a clove hitch, instead you go under this X that's created. Okay? And what that does is that creates almost I guess it's an overhand knot underneath of the clove hitch. So everything is held real secure by this one turn over top. Again, very easy knot. Very good knot for substituting as a hose clamp, for example. If you have a water line on your boat needs a hose clamp, this is a makeshift hose clamp for you. It will really bind down on something. You don't want to have something soft and squishy in this one. It will really bind down if you give it a tug. Again, from the clove hitch, we've got the boom hitch. Now, this might look like a complicated knot, might be a little bit scary, but I assure you, it is just a fancy clove hitch. The difference is that instead of just having these 2 round turns, you have 3 round turns, which helps spread the load on something like a boom, where if you have the force too concentrated, you're going to snap a spar. So you use more turns to help spread that load. If you want to spread that load further, you can actually use, like I've got here, 2 boom hitches. And then you've got an eye that you can tie onto. That load's going to be fairly gentle, fairly mild on your spar. Let me show you how this is actually done. Okay, you're going to need lots of line for this one, but it is just a fancy clove hitch. You go around your first time just like you did for the clove hitch, around the second time, but instead of finishing, you go over and to the inside left, and then the outside right. And then, instead of finishing here, you actually just go one over and tuck it under this one here. There you go. It really isn't that difficult. You've got your 4 pieces here. There you go. The next knot we're going to look at is the square knot or the reef knot. This is a knot that everybody should know how to do. It's the same knot that you use to tie your shoes, just without the bunny ears. Not a terribly strong knot, but good enough if all you're looking to do is keep your sails from flogging after you've reefed them. So let's look at how to tie this one properly. What you really have are just 2 bights on the end of your line, and they're linked together. One way to tie it is take your 1 bight, come up around the standing end and then the working end and back down around, and you can see you've got this nice shape of 2 bights linked together, and they'll just bite down on each other. The way that most people learn to tie it is to go right over left, left over right, and then you end up with the same shape. You see those 2 nice linked bights. What you don't want to do is go right over left and then right over left. You do this, what you end up with is called a granny knot. It's a weak, unstable knot. It's not good. Don't do that. Right over left, left over right. You end up with that nice linked bight shape. Left over right, right over left, right over left, left over right, doesn't matter. As long as it's not 2 lefts or 2 rights, you're golden. The sheep bend, like the reef knot or the square knot, is based on a bight. But instead on this side, you've got a loop. Instead of having 2 bights linked together, you have a bight and a loop linked together. The beauty of this is that this bight, the line that this bight is on, can be any size, a 1-inch, 2-inch line. It doesn't even have to be line. It can be a sail or a tarp. You just tie onto the corner. You put your bight on the corner of your tarp, and you put your loop in, and you're golden. Let me show you how this one is done. Again, you start with your bight on your heavier line or your tarp. All you do, come up, around and through, and underneath to make your loop. That'll bite down and away you go. A very good knot. You may want to put a safety in. I have had this one come undone before. Put your safety in. Now it can't get away on you. Same thing on this side, of course. Put your safety in, and now nothing can run free on you. That's never going to go anywhere. Take your safeties out. There you go. That is your sheep bend. The sheep bend I often use when I'm camping to tie a tarp down. You can tie it onto the corner of a sail, tie it onto anything that you need, really. As long as you can get that bight onto the corner, you can use a sheep bend to secure it. So just come up through your bight, around, tuck the tail back through to make your loop. There you go. You could sail with that. You can sleep under it. It's a great knot to know. It should be one of the first ones you learn, but I've got it buried a bit here just because of the order. Again, I think it makes more sense to learn it in this order. Moving on from the sheep bend, we have the dreaded bowline. Wait a second, they're exactly the same. Except you've got a loop. It's on the same line. Instead of joining 2 different lines, you've got the exact same knot making a loop. Now let me show you this one. Remember, you've got a loop and you've got a bight, and they are linked together. Instead of tying the loop around the bight this time, we're going to tie the bight around the loop. There you go. So you've got your bight in, got your loop there. All you need to do, tighten it up. It's not that scary. One more time, because some people really seem to have trouble with this one. You've got your tree. This is going to be the standing end. Tree stand. You've got your rabbit hole. Okay. Rabbit comes up the hole, around the tree, dives back down his hole, and you've got a bowline. One note, the last 5 years or so, the climbing community has finally admitted to themselves that this knot is not as secure as everybody would like to believe. The last 30, 40 years, somebody would die on a bowline and people would say, oh, he must have made a mistake, he mustn't have tied it right, blah, blah, blah. The last 5 years or so, people have finally looked at the emperor's new clothes and said, you know what? These people who are dying knew how to tie a bowline. It is not that difficult a knot. They didn't screw it up. The bowline failed them. I personally have had a bowline fail 3 times in one Wednesday night dinghy session. The line was wet. The line was not very good line. It was cheap line. But the fact is that this bowline will fail. Do not use it for life safety unless you have gone ahead and put a safety in. Put that safety in. This is a safe knot. Do not use it for life safety without the safety knot. Too many people have died for you to die the same way. The next bend that we'll look at is the Zeppelin Bend, also known lovingly as the Kissy Fishy Bend, and I'll show you why in a moment. The square knot is based on 2 bights. The Zeppelin Bend here is based on 2 loops joined together. I'll show you how that works. So you've got your line and you put in your loop. You're going to want the second line with the second loop. You want your tails to be opposite from each other so that if one goes down, the other one goes up. If one goes over, the other one goes under. Kissy fishy right here. Put the 2 fish on top of each other so that the tails are on the outside. One is on the top of everything. One is on the bottom of everything. Then you just take your tails and you put them through the eyes of the fish. Like so. Now, this is actually a very stable knot. It's a bit of a trick to get it to dress out properly, in fact, because everything is just so stable. But with a little bit of patience, a little bit of dressing, there you go. Super nice, stable bend. This is one of the best bends you can do. If you're using it for life safety, do go ahead and put a safety on there. But the story traditionally is that when the Americans still had Zeppelins in their navy, they would moor them with this knot and sleep soundly at night. So it is a solid bend. The last family of knots we have here is the figure 8 family of knots, named because it sort of looks like a figure of 8. This one here is the figure of 8 stopper. Very easy knot to tie. Just go around, so you have a loop there, around the back, and then through. Again, another figure of 8 loop is a figure of 8 on a bight. If you want to create a loop midway in a length of line, it's very easy to do. you just take a bight of that line and you tie a figure of 8 like you're tying a figure of 8 on a single line. Go around, create your loop, round again, and through. There you go, your figure of 8 on a bight. Alright, the next knot is your figure 8 bend, also known as a figure 8 traceback, and you'll see why in a second. Starting with your figure 8 in one side of the lines that you're going to bend together, you simply take your other line and you follow the first line all the way around through the entire knot. There's where it gets its name, traceback. Literally, you see this line comes up through here, you come up through there. See, the line goes around the back here, you go around the back there. This line comes underneath, you go underneath. Line comes around here and up through here, you do the same. Just like that. There you go. There's your traceback, or your figure 8 bend, as it's properly called. Again, anytime there's a life safety element, you simply put your safety on each side. And this thing is secure. It will never go anywhere. You can use this same method to tie a figure 8 on a bight or a figure 8 loop where you don't have access to the object to just slide your loop right over the end. Simply tie your figure 8 onto your line first, run your end around the object that you would like to tie to, and then again, just trace back your knot. Comes around the back here, dives underneath here, comes around and up from the underside here. There you go, you've got your figure 8 on a bight. And again, anytime there's life safety element, we just run our safety. Done. Just like that. The problem with a figure of 8 is that it likes to bind up quite a bit. It can be very difficult to get undone if it's been heavily loaded. So the figure of 9 is a way to solve that problem. Instead of going around and back through like you would in a figure of 8, you actually go around just a half more time through to here. And sort of get a figure of 9 shape going. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but 8 plus 1 is 9, so I'll go with it. Not quite as secure a knot, but much easier to get undone afterwards. So figure of 9, just one more time, half time around than a figure of 8, and it makes it easier to untie.
Alright, that's 17 knots in one video. Again, if you need to go back and review some of these, the bookmarks are in the description below. I hope this was of some use to you. If it was, then give me a like. I don't produce a lot of content, but if you'd like to know when I do, please subscribe as well. Thanks again, take care. First of all, I've gone through YouTube's library and personally curated a competent crew playlist of the best sailing instructional videos that I could find. Thanks for joining me to... No! They find it much easier to retain these knots, to remember and retain in each. I encourage any perspective. When the student can see the family tree and the logical progression of these knots, they find it much easier to retain these knots, to remember and frick me. Okay. Last time.